you and I had talked a lot about your book lately, and, you sent me a couple of the samples. I guess what prompted you to get into that? Or I know you had said you'd written something in the past.
Well, I've written poetry for probably as long as I've been alive. I mean, and the whole gist behind this was just one day I thought, well, I think somebody had posted some agile haikus. And I thought, let's do something more fun. I'll write a limerick. And I wrote a limerick and I got a really good response on it. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to keep doing that. So I write a limerick every Friday. And enough people commented it and said, oh, I look forward to these, etc. I said, well, what the heck? Why don't I write a book of them and see what happens? Because, I'm looking for work, so I got to find a side hustle somewhere.
Yeah.
So this is a good way to do that. So what I did was I took about 10 of the ones that I'd already posted on LinkedIn, wrote 10 or 12 more, and then I basically just spelled them all out with more, I guess, detail with some short essays. Yeah. And then I put in one big long poem called Project Woes, which is a takeoff on the Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. And really in the slightly toved gyre and gimbal in the wave, that whole thing. And the main reason I did that is because I wanted to have something in there. In Jabberwocky, there's the phrase, his Vorpal blade went snicker snack. And I wanted to be able to say their keyboards all went clicker clack. But, I just, and the thing is, I've learned so much in the 3-4 years I've been doing this as far as really getting into Agile and Scrum. And I all the lessons I've learned from other people and from just my own thinking, I wanted to pass that on because we just talked about this. There's so much argument over what things mean and what's the difference between the theory of Scrum and the reality down on the ground. And I thought, well, I've got some experience doing it. I've got a lot of experience reading and writing about it. I'll just go ahead and take a stab at it and see what people say. And so far, the reaction I've had from people that have done the reviews, I've got 2 or 3 people, including yourself, that have looked at it, and they've all been pretty positive. So I'm going to continue to. This is I think the first one I actually wrote, and it was about some of the things you were just talking about as far as measurements and comparing. A Scrum Master gained animosity by focusing just on velocity. You're trying our patience. Let's just stick with cadence, his team yelled with unmatched ferocity. So that's, it's, I think the whole limerick rhyme scheme and so on, I think that just makes it fun in and of itself. And for people that are just learning about this stuff, these are things that they're probably going to run into resistances that they would have otherwise. So when you're trying to present a new idea or get them to take an action, if you're trying to present it very straightforwardly, they're no, new information, don't want any of that, none of that for me, And if they're laughing, they're getting it, and they're not thinking about they're getting it. They're just getting it.
Concept of getting them to kind of buy into it and live it without, throwing the lingo and the semantics at them. Because again, same thing when I went into a company that was in trouble with the EPA and I had to introduce, environmental touchy-feely tree hugger stuff. I mean, these are grown men that some of them, the linemen in, power lines, they hang off of helicopters, a string power line. You can't talk to them about the critters down there and don't step on them and, the trees, you can't get close to them. There's a nesting bird. You have to introduce it and get their buy-in. It's the same concept, just different, subject matters.
Absolutely.
What do you do when their estimates are always wrong?
Down and do is talk about, number one, estimates are educated guesses. You can't hold people to them except by saying, hey, you got it wrong last time. It's okay. We were slightly off last time. Let's try to do something a little different this time. But the other problem you run into, and I had this issue when I was doing waterfall, people tend to make tasks too darn big. And so by the time you either have to do it one of 2 ways, and actually this is in the book, you either have to make your task short enough that whether you're going to make it within a day or 2, or you have to constantly re-estimate. As people put work on it, they re-estimate the remaining work. If you don't do one of those 2 things, you might as well just forget about it.
And then, Larry, you're talking about days. I've now seen it where it's gone down to hours, right?
That's micromanagement.
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. What's the value then of re-estimating, right? I mean, look, We
if
talk
you're
about
doing,
it, you
but if it's
conceptualize it.
right, but if it's small enough, you don't have to re-estimate. That's the point. I mean, if you do it as a day at a time, so let's say, for example, you have a task that's a 1 day task, and the next day the person said, well, I worked on this yesterday and I'm going to work on it some more today. Well, now you have an opportunity as a Scrum Master to say, okay, what impediment is getting in the way of you finishing this? Well, I had got hauled into 3 different meetings yesterday. Okay, well then I as a Scrum Master can say, hey, so and so needs to get this done. Can you leave him alone, or let me attend the meeting in his place, or something like that? Is that a
Larry,
good?
That's what I've been doing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Hey, this guy's kind of busy. Are you really sure you need him for 2
yeah.
hours?
Well, and going back to my previous life, going into a company and having, them being in trouble, the first thing you'd hear, we joke about Scrum police. I mean, we were kind of the nature police in a way. And obviously, I, as a person, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be looked at like that. Also, because I don't believe that's actually my mentality. But I would have to reiterate to the guys, I'm here to help you stay working. I'm here to get ahead, stay in front of it so that we have our permits, we have everything we need, and that on a day-to-day basis, I can do everything to facilitate that. Because let me tell you, we have projects that get shut down, and not just for environmental stuff, but you have a stop work, you have a violation. I mean, that's a lot of money day by day. And so the more, I keep that from happening, that is what I'm there to do. I'm not there to hold them back.
I think you have to present it to the person that you're talking to as, what's in it for you. And I wrote another post yesterday about technical debt, and making that something that the customer or the user can see as valuable, because usually technical debt's the first thing to go when there's a crunch or there's anything else. Oh, we'll worry about that later. We can put that down the road. And then, the day it comes due it's due with 300% interest, as opposed to the 5% you might have paid if you'd done it right away. But the whole idea of this was, how do you make technical debt, or fixing technical debt, sexy to the user, so they actually value it enough to insist that it be done? No. And one of the things that came up was fear of failure, or fear of missing out, are the two. And you just mentioned it. I mean, if you guys screw up and you don't follow these regulations, you're going to be shut down for a month while we straighten things out. That's a big fear. That's a big risk that somebody's not going to be willing to take. Yeah. And fear of missing out. Well, if you don't have this feature working effectively out on the, with more than 100 users, you're going to lose market share.
Yeah. Now, this is how much technical debt can you accept each, let's just say, sprint?
None. No, that's a reflexive answer. But I think it comes down to, you can do things to prevent technical debt without it being, it's more about prevention than fixing. If you're constantly fixing technical debt, there's something else going wrong. Yep. If you're able to say, like, for example, you find that somebody in your team is doing a lot of copy paste, and I've done it myself back in, I haven't done it for a long time, and I've gotten yelled at for it, because I don't like copy paste. I think you just ask, you're asking for trouble. That's the kind of stuff you fix it right away. You identify it and you say, okay, put this over in a module and call it. Don't keep, propagating the same code all over the place, so that when something goes wrong, we got to go back and recode all this work. It's more about some basic principles to think about as you're designing and writing, so that the problem never shows up. I mean, the best way to prevent technical debt is to never, ever let anybody get in the mindset of, I'll fix it later.
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, it never gets fixed.
And Larry, to kind of spice up your way of looking at it, instead of prevention, because you're going to get the guy that says, dude, I need it right now. I need it right now. That's got to work, right? That always happens. Yeah. So for me, as a Scrum Master, it becomes about managing your technical debt, right?
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good way to look at it.
You might have to take some shortcuts, but are you really, really, really sure you want to take that much of a shortcut, right? Or even, holy cow, guys, this is on fire. We need to take this, and we know we're going to have to pay for it. So how do we start talking about it right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and some of it too is the efficiency of your code. I would have written a shorter routine, but I didn't have enough time. Yeah.
The thing you point out with that joke there, Danielle, is that technical debt is like a weed in your garden, right? And some weeds are pretty looking. God, they got nice flowers and they can grow tall. But then when you have 800 of them, that becomes a gigantic problem. And honestly, allowing 10%, when you come with a number like that and you say, okay, you know what, this is what we're going to allow, you don't know how that's going to bloom. You don't know how that's going to grow. And I mean, I might be off there, Larry, but you really have to manage it. It's like a credit card. You're going to use your credit card. Do you want the balance to go all the way up to where it's not functional anymore, or do you want to keep some balance so that you're using the tool
you got to
properly?
pay it off as you go, because if you wait till the very end, and that's why I use the term, you're basically borrowing time. Technical debt is borrowing time from future effort, and you can either pay it back at, nice, good credit rating type interest rates, or you can pay it back at loan shark interest rates. And the longer you wait to pay it off, the higher the interest rate's going to be.
Yeah. Somebody's going to be wanting your kneecap.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things that I like to do, Larry, with that, as you said, look, we're going to give you a points estimate. We're going to get decent at estimating points, but manager, product owner, when the boys are in the throes of actually not even writing the code, when they're thinking about the problem, please leave them alone. That's when the time is most important, because the thinking part, that takes 90% of the actual work, right?
Yeah.
Now, once they start keying, collaborate, right?
Right.
But for the thought process, for the reviews, please give them some space, give them some respect, so that they can formulate a decent solution, right?
I think a lot of the time, though, the if they're not actually fingers on keyboard, they're not doing work. That's the attitude anyway. I talked to somebody. I talked to somebody who worked for an overseas place, and the guy broke his arm, and they said, "Can you still type?" And it's like, and since nowadays I call it the I may not look like I'm doing anything, but between my ears I'm quite busy syndrome. And a lot of time, when I was doing development, a lot of my time was spent doing this, just leaning back, staring off into space. But I was thinking. I just, it didn't look like it. Like I was doing much, but there was a lot of activity going on between, on the old cerebral cortex.
And there was something I read too that, man, it was basically saying the more time, I think, I could be wrong, that the more time they're spending surfing and doing other stuff, I mean, obviously you do have to balance that, but just because they're doing that doesn't mean that they're not working. And I fully understand that, as I've just been learning, some coding, that sometimes I'm out walking or riding my bike now, and I almost have more going on at that point in time than I do sitting in front of a computer.
There was a meme that went around for a while with the woman and the man. Obviously they're married or in a relationship, and he's turned over away from her, staring off into space, and she's thinking, oh my God, he's mad at me, he's thinking about leaving me or something, or just all the awful things that could happen. And above his head it says, my code doesn't work and I don't know why. You have people that are extroverts and introverts. And the extroverts want to collaborate verbally. They want to just sit down and talk to people and work it out that way. The introvert wants to go off by themselves and sit down and with a piece of paper and work it out. And the thing I suggested is, when you run into that, let the introvert go write up something that he can then use to introduce the problem to the rest of the group, and then let the extrovert facilitate the discussion. Yes. And that way you work with both communication styles. Because I've worked with both communication styles. I've had both communication styles at times.
No, that's been a big topic for me personally, because part of my whole career change, if you, not so much you do things right, but you kind of do want to explore yourself and know that what I'm going to go into fits me better or is what I'm looking for. So knowing how my brain operates, how I function, what environments I need, what kind of, just cultures I'm going to fit best with. I mean, I've spent a lot of time for a year and a half now really exploring that. And one of them is that whole idea of, well, introvert, extrovert, visual learning, you know, the auditory learning. There are still too many people that I'm seeing, especially more of the Scrum Master type, again, not wrong, you know, it's not that it's wrong, that don't understand that, and they're just not paying attention to what people need. I know how painful it is for me when I've been to trainings, and even just people in general, as they try to explain something to me. Or, I mean, I've had people give me a lot of shit with how much it took me to go through certain coding courses, because as I realize, like, I'm watching these videos, it's not that it's going in one ear and out the other, but I needed to step back and take notes and draw things out. And to hear somebody say, no, 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 don't write it down, you don't need to complicate it. They're not being very, I don't know, sympathetic or, you know, respectful of my learning style, but that requires you to be aware enough of not only yourself, but that others do have different, you know, viewpoints.
Just to put a little serrano pepper here in this enchilada, you know, one of the things that Danielle came into the world with, because of her path into agility, was not just semantics wars, but things that just didn't make sense, right?
You get so tied up in semantics, and you can be so woke that you're like somebody on meth.
Yep.
You know, everybody,
and
everything
look,
is, you know.
the point that you make, I think, is this, you know, Scrum is fun if you get it and if you're helping one another. If you're like really flowing in it, I mean, that's when the happy hours come in, and that's when the team wants to get together. But to Danielle's point, if you get a guy that's just, you know, rubber stamping everything, and
that brings up, though, is, you know, I've been doing IT for a couple decades, and you know, I'm the color of the beard ought to tell you that. But you know, I've heard about Agile for probably the last 10 years, and I finally just got into it in the last 3 or 4. But the thing is that the experience I have as having done development, having done project stuff, having done pretty much everything in the whole cycle of the SDLC, all the problems we're running into now aren't new. They're the same problems that have always existed. And, you know, it always comes down to, and it always killed me, management's going to pay $75, $100 an hour to some consultant to tell them things that their own employees could have told them for free. You know, but they'll listen to the consultant because he's getting paid $150, $200 an hour. You know, it's not, and most of the problems we run into now are not technical problems, they're people problems.
And so painful to see it come back to, I know I'm wrong. I'm a bad Scrum Master. That is, you know, I'm a Scrum+Sith. I give no shits. But the way I see it, we're falling back into the management pitfalls of the 90s. You know, we're literally moving backwards. And I'm like,
very wrong, but it almost seems like the command and control is coming full circle. Like, you had the people that just lived by the values and the principles and, you know, just wanted to make everything work better and more efficiently. But now you have those, those newly minted Scrum Masters that they are not understanding that. And they're almost coming back to, you know, those bickering over semantics. You have to follow everything by the book. It just seems like maybe we're coming full circle and back to that.
You know, these new guys, these new kids coming in, some of the managers are new also, and the Scrum Masters are new. And so they've come into a profession where Scrum is an expectation. It's not a change. It's not a breakage. It's not a challenge and deconstruct. So the manager comes in, and if he falls back into command and control, the Scrum Master, since he doesn't know that he's supposed to be a change agent, doesn't fight it anymore. So now you have this weird collusion building on one another. I haven't heard about the illusion of control since Jesus, like 10 years ago. And that is a core principle of agility. The fact that the more you think you can squeeze, the less you're actually achieving. And it builds on itself, right? You try to, you know, the little video we just put up. Well, the little video we just put up was born of a complaint that, hey, one guy is not pulling his weight on the team, right? Which tells you immediately, okay, someone's checking, right?
Yeah.
Why are they checking? Why is it necessary for your guys to be 100% optimal? Because that itself, just the concept is a breakage. If you think you're squeezing the lemon out of the guy's brain to get 100% code optimization, that means you're not looking at your vision and you're not actually looking at the feedback loops like you're saying. So as a coach, you have to go to management and say, hey, dude, what the hell? What are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Why are you thinking this way? That is greatly reduced or gone in the younger generation, even the younger generation of coaches, So
and I guess the beauty that I see in coming from an outside industry, and I mean, I say this all the time to Harry, the problems you guys have aren't new. Well, as we just alluded to, they're not new or isolated only to you guys. I mean, they're everywhere. Everywhere is inefficient. Everybody's got a bad manager. Everybody's got this. Everybody's got that. This is nothing unique to software development. And I mean,
can't we all just get along?
Well, no, of course.
Where would the fun be in that? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think one of the other. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Harry.
No, you. Please, we're listening to you.
One of the things that I learned in teaching, because I taught community college adult ed classes. I taught HTML and a few other things back in the day, and that was one of the things that I finally realized, and I changed my whole approach to teaching. I stopped teaching the topic. I started teaching how do you do this with the topic. So when I taught PowerPoint, I didn't teach, here's how you use PowerPoint, because using PowerPoint isn't that useful a skill. Using PowerPoint to create an effective presentation is a very useful skill.
Yeah.
And so, and one of the things I think everybody should, even if you don't really think you're going to be good at it, I think everybody should try to teach somebody something at least once. You will never learn as much about what you know and don't know as when you try to get somebody else to figure it out. And the best part of it is when you finally see that flash of understanding. I call it the bluebird of knowledge, hits them right in the forehead, and their eyes get wide and their eyebrows go up, and you suddenly, they got it. Yep. And to me, that's the best feeling in the world.
So Larry, that's very interesting, because Danielle and I talked about this a little tiny bit, not too much, but this is where I looking at Scrum and looking at how developers work, I have an extremely high esteem for leads who are not just, brilliant technical minds, but who are willing to mentor somebody, to take somebody in the team and mentor them to go one level up, right? I mean, look, let's be real. These guys, the team lead usually is too busy to do anything. But if you're willing to take somebody in your wing and be patient and explain and follow up and build someone, oh my gosh, like you just said, when that click happens again and again, I realize this dude's a team builder, not just, he doesn't just understand the code, which is critically important, but he can take a group and help them understand the code. That's, I mean, for Scrum specifically, that's gold right there.
And I found too, unfortunately, that the people that are the most technically astute are usually the worst teachers, because I understand it perfectly within 5 seconds of looking at it. Why don't you? And it's the guy that had to struggle and go through a lot of, trial and error to figure it out. He not only knows how to do it right, but he knows all the things you're likely to encounter as you do it wrong. And that to me was the most valuable thing I've had from anything I've done. I've never learned anything from doing it right the first time.
One of the things that I've been able to do, and you're absolutely right, getting that lineup of personalities so that they work is really, really rare and really, really difficult. But what I've found in my 13 years doing this thing is, look, you take a guy that's brilliant and then you put him under immense pressure, right? He does a great thing. You promote him to a leadership role, and then you triple the pressure. What you do then is now this guy is stuck in a no-win situation because he's got to rely heavily on his technical acuity to get through that. He cannot put any time to spend to learn the leadership bit, the human bit, right? So I don't know why IT does that. What I do as a Scrum Master is I make sure that I build kind of a wall, a little bubble around the team so that they can develop those necessary things that they don't even understand they need, so they become a better unit.
Yeah.
That makes me a little bit of
it's all about the team being able to work together and to and I never played team sports when I was in high school. I was a D&D player. D&D players don't do team sports. We eat Doritos and kill dragons. But one of the things that I did learn from being a game master, and that's primarily the role I've played, is there's a whole bunch of things you have to learn. You have to learn how to deal with conflicts between players. You have to learn how to schedule to try to get everybody in the same room at the same time. You have to learn how to deal with change, because you never know what the darn players are going to do. And you've spent a whole lot of time, and we could do a whole session about nothing but the skills that a dungeon master has that a scrum master can use. But you're constantly adapting to change, and you can have a whole sprint laid out the way you think it's going to go. It's a story, and you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, and then boom, everything goes to havoc. And then suddenly you're scrambling, trying to get stuff ready so that they go into the area that you didn't prepare, and you can have it all ready for them. But the thing that you were just mentioning, I'm sorry, I got off track, but you were talking about the all the pressure on the lead. And the problem, and I ran into this before too, is that if you're put into a situation where you have to use a lot of new skills to get through, and you really don't have any idea or time to develop those skills, you're going to go back to what you know how to do, which then you have the team lead doing all the coding because they can write it faster than anybody else. And now you've put 3 times the pressure on them, and you also are detracting from the rest of the team being able to learn from the guy that knows the most. And that's unfortunate, but again, it gets back to, it's not a technical problem, it's a people problem.
With all the changes in management, with all the changes in stuff, we should do a session on why are we still dealing with the beat dog, the prisoner syndrome in development teams. How in the world has that not broken out, right? Anywho,
I think part of it is because of right now especially, it's a function of the economy, because a lot of people don't want to worry about losing their job, and so they'll put up with it. And
gosh,
I think that's the big one. I mean, and I've been in that situation where you're afraid, you're in a position where there's not a lot of opportunities where you are, and so you will put up with just about anything just because it's better the devil you know.
Well, and Larry, I don't want to get into politics or anything, but I got to tell you, back in the 90s, 2000s, when in the advent of Scrum really starting to bubble up, we did build courageous teams that did challenge management. And 2 things happened. Number one, management realized, oh my gosh, I am losing kind of my power. The ones that truly got it were like, oh, I actually have more power now, but that was a very, very small minority. And you cloud that concern, that illusion of, holy cow, I'm useless now, with outsourcing. We really began to outsource everything.
I went through and
now you're bringing in guys that literally are told, if you don't do this code by this time, I won't renew your visa. And we just got that right now in the politics thing, and I'm like, ooh. But you talk about keeping people in a mindset of protection, of, oh my gosh, it's all on me. Nothing does it worse than migrant work, for lack of a better term.
The H-1Bs.
So, I guess just be respectful of the hour. We got a couple minutes, so I don't know.
Sure.
Somehow, again, we joke we're squirrels on crack. We can go in a million different directions, but that's kind of the beauty of what unfolds and the good conversations that just come up. But I don't think I shared anything with Harry about the limericks. I just said, some of them I read, I'm like, these are really good.
Well, number one, it's available for pre-sale on Amazon right now. So Agile Limericks, Larry Blankenship, got to get the plug in. But the thing that it comes down to is most of the stuff is common sense. Yeah. And most of it, and common sense isn't all that common, unfortunately. But, and again, it's, I think as I wrote the essays, and you've read some of them, Danielle, is that for the most part, I don't think any of them talk about specific technologies or tools. It's all about, here's some ways you can attack this problem and at least get a handle on it. And it's more of a starting point for conversation than this is the way to do this, to solve this problem. Here's some ideas that you can maybe use to help you get further.
Yep.
Well, I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys don't regret having invited me. I've enjoyed the conversation and getting to know you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you, Larry.
Definitely. I mean, like minds, for sure.
Exactly.
All righty, guys. Thank you.
Well,
I got to run, Danielle. I appreciate it. And thank you, Larry. Good to meet you, buddy.
Yeah.
And we'll keep in touch, hopefully.
Again. We'll do. Take care. I got a call coming in, so I'm going to let you guys go.
Thanks. Yeah.